I would like to give you a quick overview of the new implementation that we've added to JCB that allows you to do translation via a Excel spreadsheet. It is really just to make it easy for you to build your component, extract your language strings, give it to someone else, have them do the translation in whichever language you like, have them give the spreadsheet back to you, and import it into JCB without the necessity of struggling with INI files or any of that. So that was what we wanted to achieve. The other thing that you need to know is that JCB doesn't really work with placeholders when it comes to these translation strings. It actually works directly with the English string. And the reason we did that is because the placeholders, which in the INI file is let me just show you quickly. If you look at these, for example, maybe back, this word, this English word here, might be ended up being used in multiple views, the same English word, but with a different placeholder. So what we did instead is we said to ourselves, okay, to ensure that you always translate this specific English string only once, we will only add the string, and wherever it reoccurs, we'll replace it, the string itself. This should be an advantage. I can understand that you might want to have it differently, but this is how we've gone about doing this. And so when you think about create new comes, is used many places over in the files. In relation to these placeholders. But you only need to translate this create new once. And we will add it, the compiler will add it correctly in every other place where it belongs. So that's really the first thing you need to keep in mind. The second thing, which is almost as important, is that you often have strings that are across multiple components. So this string back, for example, again, or cancel or close, it is not only used in one component, it's used in many components. And so we also said to ourselves, we want to still just translate close once. And then in every other component where it's used, it will automatically be used. And so when we go to JCB, if you have a fresh install of JCB, and you scroll down and you open language translations, you see that there is no values there. The same as if you open languages, there's also no values there. If you want to have JCB populate the translation, the English strings, so where does it get them? Well, it gets them from your fields and from your site views and from any other place, either your admin view or any other place where you use translation strings. Then it populates dynamically the language translations. So you don't really ever need to click new to create any. It creates it for you. So the way to do that is you would go to the compiler, you'd select the component that you would like to compile, and you'd simply click compile. And you need do that only once. You can just clear that out again. You don't need to use it. Now if we go back to language translations, suddenly there's a whole bunch of strings here. It also tells you that it hasn't been translated at all. So just that's quickly, and we got almost 249 strings here. And like I said, close will only be shown up once. So it is with every other string. If we then open one of these, you'd see that you cannot edit the English string. Now we've had requests that people would like to edit the string, but it doesn't really make sense, because if this string is being used in a field, how would we be able to know that the relationship here needs to change? For example, if you update the string here, now JCP needs to know in that field it needs to update the label, for example. There's no way for us to determine that. So you would basically change the string and it won't be useful, because JCP on compilation will detect that this string doesn't exist, and it will just create it again. So the way that you would change a string, which is found here, is you need to go and change it in this either the field where it was created, or the site view, or the admin view. And I mean, in this case, we know that this word demo is the component's name, right? So if we want to translate that string, change that string. So for our example, I'll quickly demonstrate that. I'm going to change this demo to 2 O's, like that. And then save and close. Now I'll compile it again. And just clear it out, and then go put it back to our language translation. And now you'll see that demo is gone, because demo is no longer being used anywhere in no other component either, so the system will automatically remove it. And if we go to the end of this string, we'll see the new ones have been added. See there? So that's how you would change a English string, is you would go back to where you've set it, and then from there have it being changed. Now I'm going to just change it back quickly, and then compile it again. Clear it out again. Go back to language translations, and you'll see that it's removed the other one and it's added the correct one back. Now I'm going to translate, or I would like to translate only this one string, and if I want to do that, you'll see that there's no languages available. We decided to allow the languages to be set dynamically, meaning that you would manually create them and use them as you like. So there's an area called languages. You'd click new here, and then you'd give the language name and its tag. Now the tag, we've given you an example here, but if you do not know how this should look, there are ways for you to find out. One of the easiest ways is to actually just go to Joomla's translation area. So if you go to community.joomla.org, translations.html, and then you select, I would say just select this one that's the newest, and then you'll see there's a whole bunch of languages here. Clicking on any of these will take you down to that language, and basically this is the little tag that you'd be looking for. So if you want to do, for example, Dutch, then this is the tag that you'll use. You'd use the Dutch as the name, and then that as the tag. I'm going to set up, just for our example, I'm going to set up Afrikaans. This is my native language, so I'm just going to use Afrikaans as the language we want to create, and obviously then this is the tag. And you can create any of the languages you want to use. We might at some point add a few major languages here and ship it like that, but just that you know, you could just create a language. You cannot create a translation for that language unless you've done this. You must first create the language. It is just the way it works. Now we can go back and let's take a string that would look different in Afrikaans. So let's take author. So now here, if there's more components which the word author is used in, it will all be linked in here, and it will all be done automatically. You wouldn't need to do any of that. You will only really need to focus on this translation area. So author in Afrikaans is skrywer, or outeur. So we'll use the outeur, which is actually more correct. And then you'll select the language for which that string belongs, and then save and close. And that is as simple as that. From now on, in any component where the word author is used, if the Afrikaans translation with relation to the other strings is enough, it'll dynamically add this language to the component, and you would not need to translate it again. Now, this has all been the way it's been working up till now. So none of this is new. The area that is new is that you can actually export these strings to a spreadsheet, and then you can import them from the spreadsheet, and it'll dynamically be added. So I'm going to just select a few strings here. You don't need to select any of the already translated strings, but if you do, it will also be used. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to select a few and click Export Data. This will create a Excel spreadsheet, which you can then save. I've now opened that spreadsheet, and you see that it has a bunch of IDs, and then it has English, it's got the tag of the language, and it's got the value that we already set. So now I'm going to set the value for these others in the spreadsheet. So now you got your language file back from your translators, and they've basically translated this column. Now you could have multiple language. Every language will have its own column, and all you need to ensure is that this top header is the language tag. That's really what's important, and that this language is created and published in your system. Do not let them change the English string. When you import this file, the system will look for the ID and the string to identify that this value exists. If it doesn't exist, it will simply ignore it. So if you change author, even though the ID remains the same, it will not find it, and it will simply ignore this line. And the way I'll demonstrate this is I'm just going to change back to having 2Ks and save this document, and then let's go back and import it. Now to import it is simple. We just click on Import Data, then we select the file from our system and click Upload File, and it should dynamically map the columns in your spreadsheet to the table columns. So you would have your language strings. If you've got multiple language, it should automatically map in. If you are having multiple languages and you only want to import for the one language, then all you need to do is add this ignore the column next to the languages you do not want to import. Okay, and then you click continue. And that is it. You will now see that it has added translations except for back. Now, at first it didn't actually add these, so I had to quickly go and add a little fix to the import. I didn't realize that at the moment it actually would stop at the first failure and not import further. But I've just fixed that, and should, within the next update, this should be resolved. Anyway, point is, once you've imported it, you'll see that it has added the translations to those strings, and it's also mapped it to the correct language. But back was not imported because the English string didn't actually correspond. If we go back to our spreadsheet and fix this little error, and in fact make a little tweak to one of the other strings, just for example's sake, and then go back to importing this file after saving it, of course. Save. So again, import data, browse, now you'll see that back has been done. And the other one that we also played with was this close and new, and we added the double T there. So now you are able to export these language strings, translate them in a spreadsheet, and easily import that spreadsheet, which would automatically update your values here. If you have updated more than 50% of the English strings to a specific language, it will automatically be added to your component. You can change this percentage by going to options in JCB and then basically changing this. Select the percentage any language should be translated before the system should add the language to the component during compilation. And so that means if more than 50% of your English strings have been translated, it starts adding it to the component. If not, it will just ignore it. Okay, that is giving you a quick demonstration of the new import-export option in translating the strings in your system. And knowing that if you have translated any of these strings, only you'll need to do it once, and it will dynamically be available to every other component that uses that field or that view, and therefore these English strings. Thanks for watching.